We continue to explore the history of Maine with state historian Earle G. Shettleworth, Jr. By putting faces and names to 200 years of Maine economic history, he will give us a deeper understanding and context to Maine's past. You may submit questions for Mr. Shettleworth by using the group chat. It is a tool embedded in your streaming window. Your questions will be shared with him after his presentation, and his answers will be published in our post-conference email. Again, for continuing education credits, remember to review the exam questions at the bottom of the screen. Please welcome Mr. Shettleworth to the virtual event.
I'm Earle Shettleworth, the state historian. Very happy to be with you here this morning. I want to talk briefly about the economic history of the state and then share with you a series of images of people who lived in the early years of statehood. In 1876, Governor Sheldon Connor asked former Governor Joshua L. Chamberlain, then president of Bowdoin College, to speak about the state of Maine at the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia. On November 4th, 1876, Chamberlain delivered an address entitled Maine, Her Place in History. The first 89 pages of this long lecture were devoted to pre-revolutionary history of the state. The last 19 years chronicled Maine's separation from Massachusetts and its first 56 years of statehood from 1820 to 1876. From an economic standpoint, Joshua Chamberlain observed that the state's cotton textile manufacturing equaled its lumber business. He also cited other major sources of wealth. Shipbuilding, shoes, woolen textiles, to which could be added ice, granite, slate, lime, and fishing. Agriculture was experiencing a rebirth with potato farming in Aroostook County, and paper making was growing rapidly along the Androscoggin, Kennebec, and Penobscot rivers. Expanding rail and steamboat routes enabled summer tourism to flourish along the coast as well as the inland lakes. The state's abundant water power was the vital force for its future development. Nearly a century and a half after Chamberlain spoke in Philadelphia, Maine's economic landscape is both unchanged and changed. The traditional natural resources of ocean, land, and forest, with their fishing, farming, and lumbering, remain important forces, and tourism has become preeminent. Largely gone are textiles, shoes, ice, granite, slate, and lime. Shipbuilding is confined to naval construction at Bath Iron Works and small coastal yards building pleasure and working craft. Once a major industry, the paper making is declining. In the 21st century Maine, new activities have replaced the old. Education, healthcare, research and development, and business, financial, and professional services, all enabled by the technological revolution of computerization and the internet. Now, in the next few minutes, I want to share with you a series of images of Maine people who lived and worked in that first 56 to 60 years of Maine statehood, the 1820s into the 1860s, into the Civil War period. So if we could have the first image. Photography came to Maine in 1840. It was invented in 1839, and it was embraced all of the state very rapidly during the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, up into the Civil War period. This is a photographer, William G. Singhai of Rockland, and this would have been the image that you would have seen if you'd walked into a studio to have your portrait taken in the Civil War period. Next, please. Our images range from all over the state and to a variety of individuals. We start with William Hutchins. Are we okay on audio? I'm getting a message here. Yes, I'm sorry. We start with William Hutchins of Penobscot. He enlisted at the age of 15 to defend the Maine coast against the British and lived to be one of the last survivors of the American Revolution, dying in the 1860s. Next, please. Here's a very familiar face, Joshua Chamberlain of Brewer and Brunswick, Bowdoin College graduate, colonel of the 20th Maine at Little Round Top, a decisive engagement during the Battle of Gettysburg, later governor and president of Bowdoin. Next, please. Oliver Otis Howard, also a Bowdoin graduate and a West Point graduate, fought in 6 major Civil War battles and 3 campaigns, directed the Freedmen's Bureau to integrate former slaves into American society, and founded Howard University in Washington. Next, please. There were about 70,000 men who were engaged in the Civil War from Maine, and I show you just 2. We're looking at Benjamin G. Merry of Bath, an officer in the 2nd Maine Cavalry. Next, please. And here we have C.H. Thompson of Searsport, a young man from the 2nd Maine Cavalry who died at the age of 19. Next, please. Maine contributed important politicians to this mid-19th century period in the first decades of statehood, including Hannibal Hamlin of Paris, Hamden, and Bangor, lawyer, congressman, senator, governor, and Abraham Lincoln's first vice president. Next, please. Another prominent figure in Lincoln's sphere, William Pitt Fessenden of Portland, Bowdoin College graduate, lawyer, anti-slavery activist, congressman, senator, and Lincoln's Secretary of the Treasury. Next, please. Here we have James G. Blaine, who was just entering Congress during the Civil War to become a very powerful figure, including U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives and presidential candidate in 1884. Next, please. Here's a lesser-known figure, but an important one, William Dickey of Strong and Fort Kent, a lumberman, longtime legislator, and proponent for the development of northern Maine. Next, please. Abner Coben of Skowhegan, one of 19th century Maine's wealthiest individuals due to his family's lumber business, one of 3 Civil War governors, and a generous benefactor to state educational institutions. Next, please. Shipbuilding, of course, was a great economic force in the 19th century. Thomas Jefferson Southard of Richmond, noted shipbuilder, launched between 75 and 100 vessels between 1837 and 1881. Next, please. Farming, very important. Here, typical farmer, Joshua Winslow of Westbrook, born in 1791. Next, please. And here we have Captain William Singer of Thomaston, sea captain, merchant, and businessman. Next, please. Joseph R. Bodwell of Hollowell, owner of granite quarries in Vinalhaven and Hollowell, governor in 1887. Next. We turn now to prominent women. Harriet Beecher Stowe of Brunswick, abolitionist and author, wrote her widely read anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, while living in Brunswick. Next. Sybil Jones of South China, Quaker minister and missionary, who gained international renown for her travels to England, Europe, and the Middle East, as well as West Africa, nursed the wounded in Civil War hospitals. Next, please. Another Civil War nurse, Amy Bradley of East Vassalboro, noted educator who established the first English school in Central America, an Army nurse who served throughout the Civil War from Maine. Next, please. Women were prominent in the arts. Annie Louise Carey of Wayne, famed opera singer, performed widely in the United States, the most popular singer in America at the time of her retirement. Next, please. Lillian Nautica of Farmington, the first woman to gain international stardom in the golden age of opera, a dramatic soprano who sang wide range of roles in Italian, French, and German. Next, please. Here, an artist from Bangor, Helen Hardy, member of the talented Hardy family of artists and photographers. Next, please. Chansonetta Stanley Emmons of Kingfield, gifted photographer whose images captured the life and landscape of 19th century rural Maine. Next, please. Here we have 3 Waterville textile mill workers, ladies holding their spindles. There were thousands of young women who worked in the textile mills in Biddeford, Saco, in Lewiston, in Augusta, in Waterville. Next, please. A carpenter in Lewiston with his tools. Next, please. And here, 2 blacksmiths from Farmington with their tools. Next, please. Molly Molasses of Old Town, member of the Penobscot Nation, whose life spanned from the Revolution to the Civil War, born in 1775, died in 1867. Next, please. Samuel Osborne of Waterville, born a slave in Virginia, came to Waterville after the Civil War, where he worked as Colby's janitor for 37 years. His daughter Marion was the first Afro-American woman to graduate from Colby. Next, please. Isaac Briggs of Portland, a Jewish immigrant who came from Poland to Maine, where he worked as a peddler and a laborer. Next, please. And we end with a couple photographs of people who were very young in the mid-19th century. A girl from Augusta with her doll, about 1864. And finally, 2 boys from Camden, John and Willie, with their dog. So I think we've seen in these last few minutes a few of the faces of Maine in its first decades as a state. And I hope that you have enjoyed this brief visit and the opportunity to meet this wide variety of Mainers from the past. Thank you very much.